Welcome to this video tutorial for the Royal Stag. This is square 13 in a series of the Wrapped in Jamie Cull and the first of our season 2 squares. So let's get right into it. I'm working with the cotton 8-ply yarn here and my trusted 4mm hook for this yarn. We're starting with a magic circle. To make a magic circle, I grab the tail of my yarn and then I wrap the yarn around 2 fingers and then I cross it over. And I'm holding it down with my ring finger. With my working hand, I insert the hook under the working side strand and I grab the opposite yarn and then I make a little twist to create a loop here on the hook. Now I go into the continuing yarn and I pull that through that loop while turning my hand a little bit so that I've got the tail on my non-working side. Then I pinch this loop here and through play with tension between my finger and the yarn, I'm closing this loop. Now some people like to start with a chain 1. I find that this creates a little bit of a bulky beginning, so I just pull up that first loop a little bit and then I continue, or then I start with working into the magic ring. And for this square, we make a single crochet and then a chain 2, and we do that 4 times. So 3 more. Single crochet and chain 2, single crochet, chain 2, single crochet and chain 2. Then I pull the circle tight and I close with a slip stitch into the first stitch, into that first loop that I made. And that is my round 1 finished. If you don't like the magic circle, you can make a chain 4 and close that with a slip stitch into the first chain that you made, and then work into that ring. Now for round 2, we're going to chain 1. We'll make a normal corner. Our normal corner is always a single crochet, chain 2, single crochet. And our first stitch is going to be worked in the back loop only, and you see that I'm working over my tail here. A back loop only, and then again we are in the corner. So that round is more or less just a corner round almost. Then 1 stitch between the corners in the back loop only. And then again. Corner and working in the back loop only. Now if you find the front loops difficult to find, and it can be on this 4th side, you can use stitch markers and put those into the front loops. When you close your round, unless it's stated otherwise, we close with a slip stitch into the first stitch of the starting corner. Now here is the chain 1 that we made, so we just skip that, we totally ignore it, and we simply slip stitch into that first stitch of that starting corner. And I'm keeping this stitch pretty loose because I will be working into it later on as well. So that's round 2. Let's continue with round 3 where we have 2 special stitches. But first we start with a chain 1, and I just continue to work over my tail here. And then the corner. And our first special stitch is a treble +1 -2 in front loop, which means we yarn over twice for the treble, and our stitch will be worked 1 ahead and 2 rounds down. So this is 1 round down, and this is the front loop of the stitch that we made in the first round. So 2 rounds down, because we're now in round 3. We work a treble into that stitch, and in order to avoid unwanted increases, we now have to skip the stitch behind this special stitch. Then we work a single crochet in the next, and now we have another special stitch, which is the last on this side. So we have 3 stitches, and this is the last, which is a front post treble enk -1 -2. And the enk indicates that we are not counting back here, but we're counting the anchoring point. So we will be working around the anchoring point here, not the top of that stitch. And this is why our reference point is this front loop, which sits counting from this stitch here, 1 back, so -1, and 1, 2 rounds down. So the base of the stitch that we made is anchored -1, -2, and this is where we work around. We work around the base side of this stitch. So that's that. And then into the corner. Now what happens when we do that is that we create that little round form, that round shape here. And that's what we want. So let's just do that one more time on the next side. A treble in front loop first, +1 -2. Skip the stitch behind and work into the next. A single crochet, and then that front post treble anchored or anchoring. We work around the anchoring point, which sits -1 -2, 1 stitch back from the next and 2 rounds down. And we skip the stitch behind that one, and we're in the corner again. So it's 3 stitches on each side for this round. So you just continue that, and in the end you slip stitch again into the first single crochet of the starting corner, and then we continue with round 4. We begin round 4 again with chain 1 and then the normal corner, single crochet, chain 2, single crochet, and then our first stitch is a single crochet, and the next is a 2 together stitch. Our first leg, our first leg is a DC BB, which we're working in that skip stitch behind. So if I push this special stitch aside, we see the stitch that we skipped. These are the top loops. So I'm going to work into these skipped loops, and I'm beginning a double crochet, but I don't finish it because the next leg is a front post double crochet and I work this around the first special stitch here. So I'm working around that special stitch, and that is that two together stitch. So we're closing the gap at the same time as we're working another special stitch. Then we have a single crochet into that single crochet of the previous round, and now we're working the same stitch but with just the other way around. So we're first working the front post double crochet leg, and then we go into that skipped stitch here, work into that and those top loops, and then we work the DCBB leg, and then we have one more single crochet, the end here, and then the corner. So let's just do that one more time together. So we work the single crochet, then the first part of the two together stitch, which is a DCBB, a double crochet in the skipped stitch behind and below, and then the second leg is a double crochet around that special stitch. Oops. Then we work a single crochet in the next stitch, and then again we work the front post double crochet leg first, and then the DCBB leg. And the last stitch is a single crochet again. And oops, we're back in the corner. Here we go. So repeat that 2 more times, this one side, or this half, repeat that half once, and then slip stitch into the first single crochet of the starting corner, and we'll be together for round 5. In round 5, we're going to have a couple of new stitches that you may be unfamiliar with, or that you may remember as a variation from the square border that we did in season 1. Now we start with the chain 1, then the corner, and our first stitch is going to be one of those special stitches. So we yarn over because it's a treble. And now instead of inserting the treble in the top loops or around to make them a front post treble around that leg 2 here, we're going to insert the hook into these 2 stitches, or we're going to make the treble around these 2 loops here. So it's the front loop of the stitch 2 ahead and 1 below, and the loop that lies directly below that front loop. We're going to work around those. So yarn over twice, and then insert the hook so that we can work our treble around those 2 loops. Now we skip the stitch behind, and our next stitch is a single crochet, and then we only have the back loop to work into, then a single crochet in the back loop once more, and again a single crochet in the back loop only, and a normal single crochet in both loops. Now we're going to work backwards, and we're going to do exactly the same. So we're going to insert our hook so that we can work around these 2 loops. Again, it's the front loop and the loop directly below that front loop here. So those 2. And it really doesn't, let me show you, it really doesn't matter whether you insert from bottom to top or like I just did from top to bottom. What I'm going to achieve by inserting the hook from top to bottom is that this V is going to stay a little bit smaller. If I was to insert the hook from bottom to top like that, first it's super difficult, and second I'm going to pull a little bit on this loop here, which means that I may get a wider, longer loop. See, it's a bit longer than the previous one. So to avoid that, to make it a little bit easier, I'm just going to insert the hook from top to bottom. I may still get a wider loop, but not by much. And then our last stitch is in the corner. So actually this was the last stitch on the side, and then the next stitch goes into the corner. So we're going to have those longer stitches here on each side. Let's do it one more time together. So we start with a treble in FLB. So that's F stands for the front loop, and the loop below, that's LB, the loop below of the stitch that is 2 ahead and 1 round below. Skip the stitch behind, 1 single, then 3 single crochet in the back loop only, another single crochet, and then we're going back with a treble in FLB in the front loop and the loop directly below. And by keeping the loops on your hook close together, you can also avoid getting a very long loop here, a long V. And that's this side done. So just do that on the other 2 sides. Join with a slip stitch and meet me for round 6. Round 6 is pretty simple. So we start again with the chain 1, single crochet, chain 2, single crochet into the corner. Our first stitch is a single crochet, and the next is a DCBB. So we're working our stitch into the top loops of the skipped stitch. And if you are very sophisticated, if you want that, and if this stitch here is bothering you, you just work a DCBB MLB, which means you're working not behind, but in front of this stitch, like so, if that's what you want to do, and if that connecting stitch here is bothering you. So single crochet, DCBB, then a single crochet again, and our next stitch is a treble +1 -2 in front loop. So we're going ahead, +1 and -1 -2, this front loop here. So if you wanted, you could have put a stitch marker in here, and I forgot to mention that earlier, but let's just assume that you're able to find this front loop easily. So we work a treble in front loop, +1 -2. Skip the stitch behind, another single crochet, and now we're going to work a treble that goes back 1 stitch and down 2, which means we're working in the same front loop that we worked in before, like so. And then we skip that this stitch here, and we work a single crochet Then again a DCBB. So we just work a normal DCBB here, and then a single crochet, and we're already in the corner. Let's do that again together. And a little bit quicker. So that's a single crochet, DCBB, and I'm going to make a normal one here. Then another single crochet, treble, +1 -2, +1 -1 2. Here's the front loop. Skip the stitch, single crochet, going back with a treble in the same front loop, skip the stitch, single crochet, DCBB, single crochet. And we're in the corner. So you need to repeat that 2 more times and then close the round with a slip stitch as usual, and we made for round 7. Before we move to round 7, let's just have a quick look at these stitches here. In one of the next rounds, we will be working in the skipped stitches behind those special stitches here. So if we pull them aside, that would be these stitches here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert one stitch marker in the front loop on this side and a different color on the other side. Why I'm going to do that is because it will help me to find those stitches better later on. So let's now move to round 7. Now to start round 7, we chain 1 and we make our corner. Then we're working a single crochet, and now we're going to work a front post treble +3 -1, but we're going to work it not from the side, inserting the hook from the side that we usually do, right to left for right-handers and left to right for left-handers, but we're going to insert it from the opposite side. So that would be from left to right for right-handers and from right to left for left-handers. Then we skip one stitch and we single crochet 2. Then we're going to make a HDC BBX. Usually our HDC BBX goes into the top loop and both loops of the skipped stitch. We do that to take a bit of bulk away and to turn this stitch a little bit upwards. But for this one, you see the skipped stitch is the one where we put our stitch markers. We will be needing the front loop. So we're going to make our HDC BBX in the back loop only of that stitch. So insert and then work around to make that HDC. Now we get a very similar look to what is a normal single crochet. Then make one single crochet and we do the same again. We go into the top loops of the next stitch and in the back loop only of that skipped stitch. And now we're working a HDC BB. So we still have these front loops available to work into them later on. So now that we've made that HDC, 2 single crochet. Now we're going back with a front post treble, -3 -1. So we go 1, 2, 3 back, and then we've got this stitch here. We don't count this because this is our current round 0, which we just made. So we go back in this stitch here, or around this stitch. And around this one, we just go in the normal direction, as we usually would. We skip one stitch, and we've got one single crochet at the end. So let's do that together one more time. A single crochet, a front post treble plus 3, 1, 2, 3, minus 1 from the opposite side. So bring the yarn forward, then pull it through under that stitch and that first loop, and then go through that. 2 single, then that special HDCBB. So yarn over once, go through the top loops of the next stitch and the back loop only of that skipped stitch 2 rounds below, and work a normal HDC. And I like to pull it a little bit so it's the same height, same size as the previous single crochet. 1 single crochet, and the same again, working through the top loops and the back loop only of that skipped stitch. So we're taking a bit of bulk away from this front post here. Then 2 single, and we go back with a front post treble, minus 3, minus 1, skip 1 stitch and 1 single crochet. Super easy. You just have to know your stitches, but that's normal, and that's all. And once you've done that, you do it 2 more times and then close with a slip stitch into the first single crochet of the starting corner, and we'll be together for round 8. Round 8, starting as usual with a chain 1 and our corner, single crochet, chain 2, single crochet. Here our first stitch is going to be a front post treble. Yarn over twice, and we're working it 2 ahead and 1 round below. 1, 2 ahead and 1 round below. So that is this stitch here. We'll work that as a normal front post treble. Our next stitch is a single crochet, so we skip 1 stitch, make a single crochet, and then we're making a normal DCBB. The next stitch is a front post double treble, 0, minus 3. So we're going neither ahead nor behind, so we stay over the next stitch, 1, 2, 3 rounds down. So we're working into or around this stitch here, which was that side stitch that we made in FLB, the front loop and the loop below. A double treble. So we skipped the stitch in front of the DCBB, and we're also skipping the next stitch, which is the one behind this front post double treble. The next stitch is a single crochet, and now we're working a double treble again, and this is going to be a double treble under, +2, -3. So counting from the next stitch, we go 1, 2 ahead, and we're going to work 1, 2, 3 down, which is this single, this front loop that we've marked with a stitch marker. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't, but if you did, that's the one. Now we're not going to work over into this, but under this stitch, and this is why this one is called an under front post treble. So we're working a front post double treble in front loop, but under the stitch it is crossing. So it's not really crossing, but it looks like it is. And we're not working over, but under. Then we skip the stitch behind, and we make 1 single crochet. The next stitch is again a front post double treble. This time we're going back 2 stitches, 1, 2, and then we're going down 3 rounds, and I can tell you, so you don't need to count, this is the front loop that we marked with our other stitch marker. So again, we're not working over this one here, over this stitch, but we're working under. So we're working over the stitch it is crossing, so definitely there's a crossing here, and under the next one to go into this front loop. Let me show you again. So if we go back and work into this front loop, we usually would go all the way over these 2 stitches, but that's not what we want. We want to work over this one, but under this one. So I'm going over the first stitch it is crossing, under the next, and I'm pulling out this front loop here, and I'm working my double treble. Did I say front post double treble earlier? No, it's just a double treble in front loop. So we're working this double treble in that front loop here, and that's the front loop that is behind these special stitches on this side and on this side, where we work the HDCBB in the back loop only. Okay, so now again we're skipping 1 stitch, and we've got 1 single crochet, and again we're working a front post now, and this is a front post double treble again, and it will be worked around this stitch here, but we're going to work it from the opposite side. So from left to right for right-hander, and right to left for left-hander. Then we skip the stitch behind here, behind this front post double treble, and we're working a normal double crochet behind and below, a DCBB, into the top loops of the stitch that was skipped behind the special stitch in the previous row around. And then we have 1 more single crochet, and our last stitch is a front post treble that is worked around this stitch that we just crossed, which is, oops, this stitch here. So the stitch that comes from underneath here. So that's the stitch we work around. And then we're in the corner. So now let's do that together one more time. We start with a front post treble around this stitch here. 2 ahead, 1 down, 1 below. We skip the stitch behind, 1 single crochet, and then a double crochet into that skipped stitch in the top loops of the stitch that was skipped behind this special stitch in the previous round. We skip the stitch in front of the double crochet, and we're making a front post double treble around this stitch here, the one that goes out in an angle. Now we also skip the stitch behind this one, behind it, in front of the double treble, behind of the special stitch. Our next stitch is a single crochet, and then we're working a double treble in front loop, and we're going to work it behind or under this one. So here's our free front loop. We're going to work our double treble into this 3 front loop, skip 1 stitch, single crochet, and then we're making another double treble into that skipped stitch over the stitch that is crossing, but under that treble here. So we've got it here, we just pull that out and we'll work our double treble into this front loop. Skip 1 stitch and single crochet again. Now a front post double treble from the opposite side, from left or from right, depending on your handedness. 3 rounds down, 0 ahead or behind, but 3 rounds down. So that was again the one that's going out in an angle. Then we work a DCBB behind the next stitch, 1 single crochet, and we're going back to work a front post treble around this stitch here, the one where we crossed over with our front post double treble. And we're in the corner. So you just do that 2 more times and then your round is finished, and we're going to meet in round 9. So we're back for round 9, and we start that with a chain 1, single crochet, chain 2, single crochet. Our first stitch is a single crochet, and our next is a DCBB. So we work in the top loops of the skipped stitch from the previous round. Then a single crochet again. Now we're working a front post half treble. In this one we work from the normal side and we go around this long stitch here, that double treble from the previous round. Oh, sorry, half treble means yarn over twice and then through 2 and through all 3. We skip the stitch behind the special stitch here, and our next stitch is a HDC BBX. For this one we go through the top loops of the next stitch, which are the top loops of a special stitch, and we also go through the top loops of the skipped stitch from 2 rounds below. Now we yarn over and pull through, and then we go through all loops on the hook and we pull it tight. A single crochet, and now we're making a variation of the DCBB. Usually with DCBB, just like we did before here, we go into the top loops of the skipped stitch, and now when I hold the hook like this, you see that there is this connecting loop, and it's the loop that connects this special stitch with the previous stitch here. What I want to do for this stitch here is not go behind this connecting stitch, but in front of. So I'm inserting my hook from back to front through the top loops, and then I'm going over or in front of this connecting loop, or the loop that is between those stitches, into the top loops of the skipped stitch, like that. So on the back side, I've got this loop between, and I've got those top loops here. And then I make my normal double crochet. The next stitch is a single crochet, and now we're making a normal DCBB, and that is because on this side we don't see that connecting stitch that much. It will not be as visible as it is on this side. So we're just making a normal DCBB. A single crochet again, and then the HDC BBX. Yarn over, go through the top loops of the next stitch and through the top loops of the skipped stitch, and then make a normal HDC, a half double crochet. And then I adjust the tension to be the same size as this single crochet that I made previously. Now I'm making a half treble around this double treble here. So go through 2 and then go through 3, and I skip that stitch behind. Our next stitch is the one just goes into the one just before this special stitch here, a normal single crochet. And we're making a double crochet behind the stitch here. And one more single crochet. Let's do that again together. A single crochet, a normal DCBB. If you're very sophisticated and this loop here between is bothering you, you can also make an DCBB MLB, which means that the middle loop below, the middle loop between here is covered. Or you just make a normal DCBB. Then a single crochet, a half treble around the stitch one ahead and one below, which is the double treble here, that long stitch. Skip the stitch behind this half treble, and we'll make a HDC BBX. We go into the top loops and into the skipped loops, the skipped stitch. Make a half double crochet, a single crochet, and then the DCBB where we cover that loop between those stitches. So go from back to front under the top loops with your hook, and then from front to back into the top loops of the skipped stitch, and work a normal double crochet, a single crochet, and a normal DCBB, working a double crochet into the top loops of the skipped stitch, another single crochet, and HDC BBX. Go through the top loops front to back, and then also front to back through the top loops of the skipped stitch, and work a HDC, a half double crochet, not a single crochet, a half treble around this long double treble here. Go through 2, go through 3, skip that stitch behind that half treble, single crochet in the next, a double crochet behind and below, and a single crochet in the last stitch. Okay, so that's basically a round where you have 3 different variations of the DCBB. Interesting. And that's all. So it's Not very difficult. You can do that 2 more times around your square and then close with a slip stitch into the first single crochet of the starting corner. And then we do round 10 together. So here we are in round 10. We start chain 1 and a corner. Our first stitch is a single crochet, and the next one we did before when we're down here in round 7. So we go ahead with a front post treble, which we will be working from the opposite side. So yarn over twice, and we're going to work it around that front post half treble that we made in the previous round. So I'm just going to grab this and hold it so I can easily insert my hook from the opposite side. I'll bring the yarn to the front, and then I'm pulling through 2, through 2, through 2. We skip the stitch behind here. We'll make 2 single crochet. And then you see we've got that gap. That's our next stitch. We're going to close that with a HDC BB. So go through the top loops of the next stitch and also through the top loops of the skipped stitch. And make a half double crochet. And then we're making 7 single crochet. The fourth of those will go in the middle stitch here. You see that's the single crochet. We had the DCBB, single DCBB, and the fourth of those 7 will go into that middle single crochet. So that's your marker to see whether you're correct in your stitch count. Oops. Then a HDC BB again. Go through the top, so yarn over, go through the top loops and go through, let me see, here we are, the skipped stitches, top loops. 2 single crochet, and now a normal front post treble going back, also working around that front post half treble we made in the previous round. And 1 single crochet at the end. Let's do it together one more time. Single crochet, a front post treble from the opposite side. I'm going to grab my stitch first, hold it, and then insert the hook from the opposite side and pull the yarn through behind the stitch and also behind that first loop here. Go through 2, go through 2, go through 2. Skip the stitch behind this special stitch, 2 single crochet. So the second of those single crochets will be just before that gap here, before that special stitch gap. Now we're working a HDCBB into the top loops and the top loops of the skipped stitch. Seven single, where the fourth is going to fall into the middle stitch here. Then a HDCBB again, go through the front, or HDCBBX I must say, and then grab the top loops of the skipped stitch and work a HDC around those loops. Two single, and a front post treble, -3, -1. Working around the front post half treble from the previous round. So we go back 3 stitches and 1 round down. And 1 more single crochet, and we are in the next corner already. So just repeat that last side 2 more times, and then slip stitch into the first single crochet of the starting corner, and that's where I meet you for round 11. In round 11 we're going to start with the antlers, or even more with the antlers, with the antler endings, which is pretty exciting. So chain 1 and a corner, and now we're starting with a front post treble. We're working around this stitch here, the one that we made in the last round that we started with. So 2 ahead and 1 down. We skip the stitch behind here, which is the first stitch here, single crochet in the next. Then you've got those skipped loops here, and we'll work a DCBB, a double crochet into the top loops of that skipped stitch. We skip the stitch in front of the DCBB. And now we're making a front post double treble again. So yarn over 3 times, and we're working around the stitch that is 3 rounds below, 0 -3. And we skip the stitch in front of the DCBB and the one behind the special stitch, so you have 2 skipped stitches. And then we're making 2 single crochet. Now something quite unusual in our image overlay, we're going to work directly in the next stitch with a half treble. Just the front loop. Just the front loop, and we're working a half treble. And in case you're wondering why we're not making a normal double crochet, because we go through 2 and then we go through all 3, is because we need the substance here at the top. So that's why it's a half treble and not a normal double crochet. 1 single in the next stitch. You see, it's a very tiny knot here, but we need that. You'll see in the next round. As I said, 1 single crochet, and then a front post double treble, again from the left or from the opposite side. Left for right-handers and right for left-handers. We're going to work around this stitch, so I'm just going to grab this and insert my hook from the opposite side. And then I work my double treble. Skip 1 stitch and single crochet in the next. And again a front post double treble, this time just normal. And we're going back 1 stitch and down 3. So we're working on that first, around that first stitch here, so that we receive a crossing, that we achieve a crossing like that. Skip 1 stitch, 1 single crochet, and then that half treble in front loop again. Yeah, now we'll twice work in the front loop only of the next stitch. Go through 2, go through 3, and then 2 single crochet, in the front post double treble from the left. We go around this stitch here, so not the top one here, but the one that's underneath. I'm going to grab it and I'm working from the opposite side. Bring the yarn to the front and pull it through like that, and then go through 2, 2, 2, and 2. Now we're working a double crochet in the skipped stitches here, behind and below the next stitch. 1 single crochet, and we finish with a front post treble. We're working around that last stitch here. And we're in the corner, so we skipped the last stitch because we made that front post treble. If you want, you can join me for the next side. Again, front post treble, skip the first stitch here, single crochet in the next, then a DC BB. We work in those skipped stitches. Then we skip the stitch in front, and we're making a normal front post double treble around this stitch here, 3 rounds below. Skip the stitch in front of that, so that was the double treble, that was the double crochet. This is for the double treble, and we make 2 single crochet. The half treble in front loop, then 1 single crochet, a front post double treble from the opposite side, not around the next stitch, but the one after it, the one that's crossing here. And we work from the left, so I'm just going to grab it, hold it, yarn in front, pull from around the stitch end of that loop, and then 2, 2, 2, and 2. Skip 1 stitch, single crochet in the next, and now a normal front post double treble, going back to the stitch that is under the cross here, the crossed one. Skip 1 stitch, 1 single crochet, half treble in front loop, just working in the next stitch, and then 2 single crochet, front post double treble from the opposite side around the stitch 3 rounds below, a double crochet behind and below into those skipped stitches, or into that skipped stitch, 1 single crochet, and we go back with a front post treble to work around the stitch here. And the corner. So repeat that last side here 2 more times, and then close with a slip stitch in the first single crochet of the starting corner, and we continue with round 12 together. Round 12 will definitely require your attention and good concentration. So we start with the corner. That's easy enough. And I can tell you we're going to have 4 different kinds of DCBBs, 4 different variations, which is kind of exciting, but can be or can feel intimidating. Okay, let's start really easy with a single crochet. Then we're going to make a normal double crochet into the top loops of the skipped stitch. So that would be a normal DCBB. Skip the stitch in front of the DCBB and 1 single crochet in the next. We're going to make that front post half treble +1 -1 again that we did before. We're going around this long stitch here. So you're familiar with that. And we skip the stitch behind this front post half treble. Our next stitch is the HDC-BBX, so we go through the top loops and we go also through the top loops of the skipped stitch. You know that one. Easy enough. Okay, 1 single crochet. And now we're going to make a 2 together stitch. So the first leg is a treble leg, and we're working that over this stitch we made the front post half treble around the same stitch, that long double treble, front post double treble. So that's the treble leg, and the second leg will be a half treble from the opposite side, and we're going to work that in that little stitch. Remember, we had that half treble in front loop only. That's where we're going to work that stitch into, but from the opposite side. So I'm going to grab that stitch and insert my hook from the opposite side, bring the yarn forward here, and pull it through behind the stitch and the first loop, and I'm going to work a normal half treble. We need those 2 loops here for the substance. So in the end, let's just go back, you're going through 4 loops. The 2 from the second leg, the 1 from the first leg, and the 1 that's already on the hook. I've got a longer stitch here, so I'm just going to do that again because I want this to be short. So front post leg around that double treble. And then the half treble, front post half treble around that shorty little stitch here. Going through all 4 loops. Okay. So we skip the stitch behind this 2 together stitch. And now, because we worked this half treble here in the front loop, we only have a back loop left here, but I still want to turn this up. And in order to do that, I need to do a HDC-BBX in the back loop only, because I only have the back loop left. So instead of having 4 loops here, like I did with a normal HDC-BB, I have the 2 from the top. Let's do it again. So I go front to back through the top loops, and because I only have the back loop left, I'm going through that back loop, and I've got those 3 loops here plus those 2. So I go around those 3 loops, and then I make a normal HDC. Now I'll make 1 single crochet in the next stitch, and if you want, we're going to make that DCBB MLB again. So we go from back to front through the top loops, go in front of that loop between those 2 stitches into, from front to back now, the top loops of the skipped stitch. See that? So it looks like I've got 3 loops, which is that loop here between the stitches and the 2 top loops of the skipped stitch. And now I'm working a normal DC, double crochet. Skip the stitch in front here and work a single crochet in the next stitch. And now again a normal DCBB in the top loops of the skipped stitch. One single crochet. Now again we're working a HDCBB in back loop only. So yarn over, go front to back through the top loops of that half treble we made in front loop, and find the back loop of that stitch below here, and we're working a half double crochet around those loops. Now we have that 2 together, but this time it's reversed. So we have our half treble leg first, yarn over twice, and we go from the normal direction, how you would normally work, insert the hook just behind this half treble. Yarn over, pull through, and we go through 2 loops. So you have 3 loops left on the hook. Yarn over twice again, and now this time this second leg will again be worked from the opposite side. So I grab my stitch that I want to work around, which is that long double treble here. I grab that stitch and then I work from the opposite side. Bring the yarn to the front, pull through behind the stitch and the first loop, and then I work my normal treble leg, and now I've got 4 loops on the hook, and I work through all those 4 loops to finish off that 2 together stitch. Again, that gives me the substance that I need here later on. We skip the stitch behind that 2 together, and we work 1 single crochet in the next, and then the HDC BBX again. Go to the top loops of the next stitch and the top loops of the skipped stitch. So you've got 4, those 2 plus those 4, and we work around those 4, and then we make our HDC, half double crochet. Now we're working a front post half treble again, and this one is worked under the stitch of a previous stitch. So we made that second leg, which was that front post treble leg, and now we don't want to work over here, but we want to work under that stitch. So it's not a crossing stitch, we have sometimes work under crossing stitches, but this one is worked under the previous stitch we made, like that. And then go through 2 and go through 3. So that's our front post half treble under the previous stitch, under the front post we made. We skip 1 stitch and we have 1 single crochet in the next, then a double crochet behind and below into the top loops of the skipped stitch, and a single crochet in the next stitch, in that's the last stitch on this side. Let's do it together again, one more time. Single crochet, and then a DCBB, just a normal one, or if you're sophisticated you can do one in front of that loop between. then a single crochet again, a front post half treble, plus 1 minus 1, so we go 1 ahead and 1 round down. Oh, sorry, half treble, not a treble. Now we're working that HDCBB, so we go into the top loops and in the top loops of the skipped stitch. We've got 4 loops that we work around, pull the yarn around through, and then go through 3 for the half treble part of it. 1 single crochet in the next stitch. Our first leg of the 2 together stitch that we're doing is the treble leg. So yarn over and go through the same stitch that we made that front post half treble around, which is that long double treble stitch. Go through 2, go through 2. You've got 2 loops on the hook. Now again, yarn over twice, and we're going to insert from the opposite side. So I'm grabbing my stitch, and then I insert from the opposite side, and then go through 2, and now go through all 4 loops on the hook. Skip this stitch here between those legs, and we're going to make a HDC BBX, which means we're working in the back loop only. HDC, go through the top loops and the back loop here, and then make a half double crochet. I'm just correcting my tension here. 1 single crochet, and because I want to hide this loop between those 2 stitches, I'm making my DCBB. I go back to front through the top loops, and then front to back in front of that loop between the stitches, like so. And I work a normal double crochet. Then I have 1 single crochet and a normal DCBB. Then 1 single crochet again, and a HDC BBX, a half double crochet behind and below, but through the top loops again, and the back loop. Because we don't have the front loop available, we work that half treble into it. So through the back loop only. Work around those 3 and then HDC. Now we make the half treble leg first, so yarn over twice and insert your hook just behind this half treble from the previous round here. Pull through, go through 2, leave those 3 loops on the hook, yarn over twice again, and we're working around this long double treble, but from the opposite side. So I grab it from the opposite side. Actually, I'm going to physically grab that stitch because then it's easier to bring the yarn in front. And then I'll go through 2, go through 2, go through all of them. All 4 loops on the hook. Skip that stitch behind here, 1 single crochet. A normal HDC BBX, so go through top loops and the loops of the skipped stitch, and work a normal HDC, half double crochet. Now we make again that front post half treble under. So you see we have those 2 stitches, the one that we just made and that long double treble. We just go under, insert the hook behind those 2, and we're making a front post half treble. So go through 2 and then go through 3. Skip that stitch behind, there is 1 single crochet in the next, a double crochet in the top loops of the next stitch, and 1 single crochet in the last stitch here. And that's it. So all you have to do is go slow, concentrate, and if you don't have it, I highly recommend the chart. So get the paid pattern, because that includes the chart, which is super helpful for stitch placement. So now repeat this side and then 2 more times, and then close with a slip stitch into that first single crochet of the starting corner, and we'll meet for round 13.